in this station, we will be solving linear equations. So before I get started, we need to talk about what it means to be an equation. So in the word equation, it has this word right here, EQUA. In algebra, or any math class, that looks like the word equal. So an equation has an equal sign. So there are two ways to solve an equation. One way is by doing it the algebraic way, which I will start to do. Now, if you are someone who would rather use the calculator on your test, I want you to fast forward this video until you see the word calculator and then stop it and watch that section of the video. So I'm going to begin by showing the algebraic way because some of you guys prefer to use the algebra. So the algebraic way when solving is the first thing I need to do is see if I need to distribute anything. So I'm going to look on the left side of the equal sign. I have a parentheses, which means I am going to have to distribute something. So I'm going to look at the front of the parentheses and I notice I have a negative. If there's not a number there, that means a -1, and that's what we're going to distribute. Now just a reminder, what it means to distribute is multiply. So I'm going to multiply the -1 times the -4x, and that's going to give me a positive 4x. Multiply the -1 times the positive 7, and that gives me a -7. I'm going to bring down the equal sign. Over here, I have another set of parentheses, which means I am going to have to distribute. So I'm going to look at the number in front of the parentheses, and I have a -4. I'm going to multiply that into each term. So I get -8 plus 12x. So I need to notice that one thing that I did not bring down is this 9x. I didn't distribute that. So all I'm going to do is bring that down where it was to start with. So your very next step is to look at each side of the equal sign and see if there are any like terms that you can combine. So remember, like terms is if it has an x, then you can add it with something else that has an x. If it has an x with a little 2, you can add it with an x with a little 2. So I have a 9x and a 4x. I'm going to add those together. So 9 plus 4 gives me 13x. I'm going to bring down the -7 and the equal sign. Over here on the other side of the equal sign, I have a -8 and a 12x. Because they both don't have x's, I cannot add them together. So I'm just going to bring those down. Alright, next thing is I need to get the x on one side of the equal sign. Right now I have a 13x over here and a 12x over here. So I need it only on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 12x and I'm going to move it to the other side. But in order to move it, I have to do the opposite operation. So if I'm adding 12x, the opposite would be subtracting 12x. Right, I subtract those, so I get 1x. I'm going to bring down the -7 and the equal sign, bring down the -8. Now I just need to isolate the x, meaning get it all by itself. So here's my x. The only thing that I need to move away from it is this -7. Again, by doing the opposite. So I'm going to add 7 to the other side. So we get 1x is equal to, those cancel, -8 plus 7 gives us -1. So our x value is -1. Alright, so looking at number 2, this time I don't have an equation, I have an inequality. So this sign right here. However, it works the same way as if there was an equal sign. So I'm going to go through the steps on how to solve this inequality, the same steps. So we're going to start with distributing. So I distributed the -4 into the parentheses. Now I'm going to see if I can combine any like terms. I have no like terms on one side of this inequality, so the next step is to get the x on one side. So what I decided to do is move the -2 to the other side by adding it to the other side. So now now I need to get the x all by itself. So what I did next was I covered up my x and I added or subtracted whatever was on the side of that x to get it away from it. So now all I have to do is get rid of this negative 2 in front of the x. So they're right beside each other, which means we're going to have to divide by that negative 2. Now, this is what is different about solving equations up here is anytime you divide by a negative, you have to flip this inequality. So because I'm dividing by a negative 2, this is going to flip. This now becomes x, and if I divide those, I get negative 13. Okay, now we're going to go through it by the method of the calculator. So again, if you're on your test and you're someone who would like to use the calculator over the algebra, watch this part of the video. Okay, just like before, we talked about an equation. So an equation has an equal sign. It has one thing on the left side and one thing on the right side. So anytime you see that and there's only one variable, meaning only one letter. So I only see one letter and that's x throughout this equation. So anytime you have that, what you can do is go to Numeric Solver. So just a reminder, you press Math, you go up 1, and it's right there. Now in Numeric Solver, you type in one side of the equal sign into one of the boxes, and the other side of the equal sign into the other box. Once you have that, you're just going to press Graph twice. So it gives me the solution x is equal to negative 1, which we got earlier by doing the algebra. All right, number 2. Okay, so what makes number 2 different is the fact that it has that inequality, but if you notice, you still have some things on the left side, and you still have some stuff on the right side as well. So even though there's not an equal sign here, if we're still solving, you can still use Numeric Solver. So, we're going to do the same thing. Go to Math, go up 1, press Enter, type in one side of your inequality in one box, and the other side of the inequality in the other box. Once you have that, press Graph twice, and we get x is equal to negative 13. So if we look at our answer choices, again we have inequalities, but the only number that is negative 13 is B. Okay, now you have an activity back in Google Classroom that you need to click on. It should be under station number 1. So you need to finish that.